My name is Greer Tatum, and I'm 38 years old. And on a Monday morning in late September, in pajamas at the kitchen counter of a brick row house on Brady Street in Davenport, Iowa, with an 11-year-old beagle named Marigold asleep against my left foot and a cooled mug of coffee in my left hand, I opened my bank app, and the cursor blinked over a recurring monthly transfer of $4,200 to my mother that had been going out on the first of every month for 14 years. $705,600. I had paid that amount in cash in 14 years into the household account of a woman who, 48 hours earlier, behind a kitchen door she believed was closed, had explained calmly to my older sister that I was, her phrase, the replacement daughter, and that the money was just gratitude because we chose her. I want to take you back to that kitchen door, and I want to take you back further than that, and I want to take you back to a daybed in a sewing room in 1995. But before I do, I want to ask you something. If you are listening to me right now, if you are folding laundry, driving home, sitting in a parking lot you do not want to leave yet, I want you to hit subscribe, because there are women on this channel every week who have signed checks they should not have signed, and you are going to want to find them. Hit like if you have ever paid for somebody's affection on a monthly basis and called it love. And in the comments, tell me where you are watching from and what time it is where you are, because I want to know who is sitting at the kitchen counter with me tonight. Now, let me take you back. I was 4 years old when I was adopted out of a foster placement in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, into the Tatum family of Bettendorf, by the same Mississippi River about an hour east. My adoptive father was Arlen Tatum, a regional bank trust officer, the kindest man I have ever known. My adoptive mother is Marjorie Pruitt Tatum, a retired high school guidance counselor, the kind of woman the neighbors call so put together. They had one biological daughter, Adrian, 3 years older than me. They had also had a stillborn daughter named Charlotte 2 years before they adopted me. My mother named Charlotte to the family. She mentioned Charlotte at every Christmas. She told me, sitting at her vanity the year I turned 11, brushing her champagne blonde hair, that I was here because Charlotte was not. I was 9 the first time I understood the arithmetic. It was the morning of Adrian's 12th birthday, and my mother sat me at the kitchen table in her warm, patient, guidance counselor voice and explained that Adrian had earned her own room because she has been with us longer. I slept on a daybed in the sewing room until I was 14. I want to tell you something about a daybed in a sewing room. There is a particular kind of quiet that lives in a child who has been told, at 9, that she is the visitor. It does not go away when you grow up and earn a finance degree at the University of Iowa and pass your CFP and your CTFA and join your father's old bank. It just learns to wear a camel sweater. My father was the only person in that house who saw it. He died 6 years ago of a heart attack at 63. 3 months after his funeral, on the Sunday afternoon, I drove out to my mother's living room with a casserole and the will Vera Linden had finished reading to her. My mother set the casserole on the counter and said, "Greer, honey, I have been doing the math, and the country club is going to be a stretch this year." And she suggested, gently, like a guidance counselor reading a college brochure, that perhaps $4,200 a month into the household account would help her maintain the small dignities. I want you to know what I did. I said yes. I said yes standing at her kitchen island 3 months after my father had been buried in his blue suit beneath a marker engraved with the words, husband, father, steward. I said yes the following month. I said yes for 14 consecutive years. The first transfer left my account on a Tuesday morning in late October 2010 at 6 o'clock, automatic, $4,200 routed from a Mississippi Valley Trust and Bank checking account I had opened my first month at the firm into the household account my father had quietly maintained at a smaller credit union across the river. I remember that morning because Marigold was a puppy then, 12 weeks old, and she had chewed the corner off a leather-bound copy of Henry James, my father had given me for my college graduation, and I had laughed for the first time in 11 weeks. The same week that Beagle ate my book, my mother began to receive the country club's monthly statement on her own account again, and she called me on a Thursday afternoon in tears and said, "Greer, honey, your father took such good care of me. I do not know how I will manage." And I told her I would manage. The transfer continued the next month, and the month after that, and every month for the next 168 consecutive months, including the months I was sick with bronchitis, the months I broke my own engagement, the months Marigold had her teeth cleaned and the bill was $1,200, and the month last March when my own roof needed to be patched, and I delayed the repair for 47 days. I never missed one. I never asked her to thank me. I never showed her the spreadsheet. I never said no. I told myself it was because I made $148,000 a year, and she was 66 and widowed, and I could afford it. I told myself it was because my father would have wanted me to. I told myself it was because love has to look like something. None of those were the reason. The reason was that I was still 9, on the daybed in the sewing room, listening to my mother explain to my sister that some daughters earn rooms and some daughters do not. I was still trying to earn the room. If you have ever paid for a room in your own family, hit like. Share this with the woman in your life who needs to hear it. Subscribe so I can find you again. We are not done. The luncheon was on the Sunday before that Monday morning. My mother turned 72 on a Sunday in late September. The Bettendorf house on Belmont Road has a wide, curved driveway and a wraparound porch and a brass door knocker my father chose at an estate sale in Galena in 1998. And walking up to it always feels, even now, like reporting for an evaluation. I wore a camel cashmere sweater, dark espresso brown wide-leg trousers, a cream silk camisole, pointed-toe black leather loafers, the pearl ring my father's mother had left me, and a thin gold pendant with my father's initials. I have learned what to wear into that house. The pendant lives under the camisole. I let myself in. The wallpaper in the front hall is the same dusty rose damask my mother chose in 1989. And on the wall at eye level, there are 7 framed photographs of Adrian. Wedding day, college graduation, both children at birth, a beach in Sanibel, and 1 photograph of me, smaller, slightly higher than the others, taken at 16 at a school orchestra concert. I have walked past that photo wall 403 times since I was 11. I once counted. As I came in, my mother was in the front room with a Bettendorf Country Club friend named Patricia Whitlow, who is 68 and was in my mother's wedding. And my mother turned to her with a hostess smile and gestured at me and said, "Patricia, you remember Greer? Greer is our generous one. She does so well at the bank. She takes such good care of us." Patricia smiled like a person who had heard those words said about me before. There was a moment, walking through the front room, when I noticed something on the antique secretary against the far wall. Underneath a small enamel dish, the dish my father used to drop his pocket change into when he came home, was an envelope, addressed in his handwriting, to me. The envelope had been there for at least 2 years. I had walked past it dozens of times. My mother walked past it every day. I noticed it the way you notice a photograph slightly crooked on a wall, and I kept walking. I will come back to that envelope, because that envelope ended my mother. Adrian arrived at 12:15 with her surgeon husband Beaumont and her teenagers, in an olive green linen wrap dress and a low bun and the same pale blue eyes as our mother. And the luncheon happened the way luncheons in that house happen. Flowers, a roast, a small, careful argument about whether a Chardonnay was the correct choice, my mother's birthday candles. After the cake, I carried my own plate into the den, to my father's old wing chair, the one with the worn left armrest, and I sat there alone listening to the dishwasher start in the kitchen. The kitchen door, the one between the den and the breakfast nook, was an inch open. They did not know it was open. I heard my mother's voice first. She said, "Adrian, sweetheart, you have always been my real one. Greer is, Well, Greer is the replacement daughter. The money is just gratitude, honey. She pays it because we chose her. You and I both know that. And there was a pause, and Adrian said, very softly, Mom. Just that. Mom. And my mother said, Don't make a face. It is not unkind. It is the truth. I want you to picture me. I want you to picture a 38-year-old woman in a camel cashmere sweater, in a wing chair in a den in Bettendorf, Iowa, with a slice of birthday cake on a small plate in her lap, hearing the sentence she had suspected for 29 years, finally said out loud, in the voice of the woman who had been doing the suspecting for her. I did not cry. I did not stand up fast. I did not drop the plate. I set the plate on the side table. I stood up. I walked back through the living room, past the photo wall, past the envelope on the antique secretary, past my mother and Patricia. I kissed my mother on the cheek. I said, Happy birthday, Mom. I drove home. I sat in my car in front of my own row house on Brady Street at 9:46 on Sunday night. I opened the bank app. I will tell you something I have only told 2 people. I would not admit this out loud. Canceling the autopay was not the first thing I did. The first thing I did was change the next month's transfer amount from $4,200 to 420 cents, with a memo that said, This is what gratitude is worth in pennies on the dollar. I want to tell you that I changed it back to 4,200 10 minutes later because I was scared. I want to tell you that I almost cried in the car. I did not. I sat there in the dark for 46 minutes with my hand on the steering wheel and Marigold asleep on the passenger seat. And what I felt was not anger. It was a clean gray emptiness, like the inside of a bank vault at 5 in the evening when everyone has gone home. I want you to understand why I did not feel anger, because I think a few of you, watching me, are waiting for the anger and wondering why it has not arrived yet. Anger is what you feel when something has been taken from you that you thought was yours. The thing my mother took had never been mine. I had been renting it. The room. The story of being the daughter who was just like the other daughter. The story of being the daughter at all. I had paid $4,200 a month, on time, for 14 consecutive years, in exchange for the right to walk into the front hall of a house in Bettendorf and not look directly at the photo wall. That is what the money had purchased. It was not love. It was permission to keep pretending. And the moment my mother said the sentence out loud, through a kitchen door she did not know was open, the rental was over. You cannot be angry at a landlord who finally tells you the apartment is not yours. You can only stop paying. I left the 420-cent transfer scheduled. I went inside. I poured myself a glass of water. I sat at my kitchen table. I made a list. By Wednesday afternoon, I had pulled 14 years of bank records and totaled them, $705,600, and run them against my mother's known income, which is her late husband's pension, Social Security, and a modest mutual fund my father had left her. The math did not match what she had been telling me she was spending the money on. There was, on her end, somewhere, a leak. I went into the small, windowless conference room behind the trust desk on Wednesday afternoon. I asked Vera Linden, my supervisor and my father's oldest friend, 63 years old, with a steel gray pixie cut and reading glasses on a chain, to come in and close the door. I said, Vera, I need you to pull anything you have on my mother. Vera looked at me for a long beat. She said, Greer, sit down. Your father left an envelope in my desk for you 6 years ago. He told me to give it to you the day you finally asked. Vera went to her desk and came back with a small cardboard box, the kind checks used to come in. She set it on the table between us. She said, He said you would know when. I want you to lean in here, because this is the moment in the story where I learned my father had been waiting for me to be brave for 6 years, and I had not been. And he had known I would not be in a hurry, and he had loved me anyway. I opened the box at home, at my own kitchen table, on Thursday evening. Inside was a one-page letter in his handwriting, plus a sealed manila document. The letter said, "Greer, your mother is going to spend the rest of her life trying to convince you that you owe her something. You don't. Inside is a trust I created in your name in 1992, the year you were 6, the same year your mother told you that your room had to be earned. It is funded with the original $50,000 I set aside that month, and it has compounded for 32 years. Your mother does not know this account exists. She thinks her name was on the original account. It is not. The trustee is Vera Linden. The beneficiary is you. You are not owed by your mother. She is owed by your patients, and only that. The patience has been more than she deserved. I love you. Dad." The trust statement was attached. The current balance was $491,000. I am going to ask you for one thing. Hit like, share this with one woman in your life who has been told the room had to be earned, and subscribe to find me again. There is a part of this story I have not told yet, and the part is the worst. And the worst is not what my mother said about me. The worst was something Vera did not say in that windowless conference room. The worst was her face. Vera Linden had been my father's friend for 22 years before he died. They had taken their lunches together at the same diner on Harrison Street every Wednesday afternoon for 19 of those years. And Vera had been one of the 7 people who eulogized him at his funeral. And she had stood at the kitchen island in my mother's house, holding a casserole dish on the day I gave my mother my first transfer. And she had not said one word about my mother to me in 14 years. Until I asked. When she went to her desk and brought back the cardboard box, she set it down on the table between us, and then she sat down across from me, and she took her reading glasses off the chain, and she said, "Greer, he told me you were not going to ask for a long time. He told me you were going to try, the way he tried, to find a way to love her and keep her at the same time. He told me when you finally asked, it would mean she had said the thing out loud." She did not ask me what the thing was. I did not tell her. We sat for a long minute in the conference room, with a small cardboard box on the table, and the fluorescent overhead buzzing the way fluorescent overheads buzz at 4 in the afternoon in a bank in Davenport, Iowa. And she finally said, "Take it home. Open it tonight. Call me Friday. I will not tell anyone you have it." I drove home with the box on my passenger seat and Marigold on the floorboard, and I did not open the box that night. I want you to know that. I sat with it on the kitchen table for 3 hours, and I drank a glass of water, and I called my friend Hannah, who lives in Iowa City and teaches first grade and has known me since we shared a dorm in 1995. And I told Hannah everything I had heard at the kitchen door on Sunday afternoon. And Hannah listened, and at the end Hannah said, "Greer, you are going to open the box tomorrow night. Tonight you are going to walk Marigold and eat a real dinner and sleep in your own bed." I did. I want you to know that opening the box on a Wednesday rather than a Tuesday saved me. There is a kind of brave that is just patience renamed. Friday morning, I called my sister Adrienne in Naperville, Illinois. I did not accuse her of anything. I did not raise my voice. I said only, "Adrienne, I need to ask you one factual question. Did you know that Mom amended her will 18 months ago?" The line was quiet for 11 seconds. I counted. Then Adrienne, who has spent 41 years inside the arithmetic that made her the original, said, "Greer, I have been trying to work up the nerve to call you about that for 8 months. She told me what she knew. Marjorie, 18 months ago, had walked into her family attorney's office in Davenport, the same attorney my father had used, and amended her will to leave the Belmont Roadhouse and the bulk of her remaining assets entirely to Adrienne, on the grounds that Greer has done very well for herself. 2 years ago, she had also taken out a $500,000 life insurance policy on herself, with Adrienne as sole beneficiary, and the premiums on that policy were paid quietly out of the household account that I had been funding with $4,200 a month. I want you to sit with that for a second. My mother had been using my monthly transfer to fund a life insurance policy that would pay her favorite daughter $500,000 when she died. Adrian told me she had been sick about it for 8 months. She said, "Greer, I have been a coward." I did not disagree with her. I did not forgive her in that phone call. I told her, "I need you to come to Mom's house on Saturday morning, and I need you to stand behind me, and I need you to tell her you told me, and I need you to tell her you are not your mother's lawyer anymore." Adrian said yes. The cliffhanger landed there. Saturday morning, 10:50 in the morning, when I pulled into the driveway of the Belmont Roadhouse with a plain brown envelope on my passenger seat and Adrian's silver Volvo already parked under the maple tree. The morning was cold for late September. The maple was just starting to turn. I sat in my car for a moment with my hand on the gear shift and looked at the brass door knocker my father had bought in Galena in 1998. And I thought about my father's letter in the manila document on my passenger seat. And I thought about the small, unopened envelope from the antique secretary that I had picked up the night before and not yet opened. And I thought about my own kitchen at home, and Marigold curled on the rug, and the $4,200 autopay still sitting in the bank app marked active until I touched it. I wanted to be very clear with you about this. There was a part of me, in that car, that wanted to call the whole thing off. I would not admit that out loud. I am admitting it here. There is always a part of a daughter that wants to call it off and go back to the daybed and earn her room one more time. Don't. The room was never the prize. The mother was never the prize. The prize was the woman who is doing the earning, and that woman does not need to earn one more thing in your kitchen. Hit like, subscribe, share. I got out of the car. I walked up the porch with the brown envelope under my arm. I did not knock. I let myself in with the key my father had given me in 1996, the year I turned 10, the year he watched me close the sewing room door behind me one too many times. My mother was in the kitchen at the Marble Island in a blush silk blouse and ivory wide-leg slacks and her 30-year-old diamond studs, with 2 coffee cups out, like she had been expecting a Sunday visit from a daughter who paid for her country club. Adrian was in the breakfast nook, in the same olive linen dress, hands folded in her lap. There was a confrontation. It happened in 8 layers, because 8 is the number of layers it took, and I have replayed every one of them in my head so many times that I could narrate them in my sleep. Layer 1. I came in. I kissed my mother on the cheek. I set the brown envelope on the Marble Island. I did not open it. Layer 2. My mother offered me coffee from a Davenport roaster I had once mentioned to her in passing, and she said, "See, honey, I do see you." I said, "I'm not staying for coffee." Layer 3. I slid a single piece of paper across the marble, the bank confirmation that the $4,200 autopay had been permanently canceled, effective the following Tuesday at 6 in the morning. Layer 4. My mother did the half-second thing. Composure, gathering, warm recovery. "Honey, I'm sorry if something I said," and I cut her off, calmly, and slid across the printout of the $75,600 annual transfers over 14 years. Layer 5. Adrian stood up from the breakfast nook and walked into the kitchen. She did not stand next to me. She stood behind me. She said, "Mom," I told her, "about the will, about the policy. I told her on the phone yesterday morning. I have known for 8 months. I should have told her then." Layer 6. My mother's face deflated, not collapse, deflation. A guidance counselor watching the script she had trained on for 40 years stop working in real time. Her hand went to the pearls at her throat. They were Charlotte's pearls, the strand my father had bought my mother the spring after Charlotte was stillborn, the strand she had worn at every birthday since I was 6, and she did not take her hand off them. Layer 7. I opened the brown envelope. Inside was the small, unopened envelope from the antique secretary, the one in my father's handwriting that had been sitting under the enamel dish for 2 years. I had opened it for the first time the night before. I read the single short note inside out loud. It said, "Marjorie, if Greer is reading this in front of you, it is because you said the thing out loud. I left her a trust. I left her her own way out. I forgive you for who you are. I will not forgive you for what you have done in front of our daughter. Arland." My mother's hand on the pearls did not move. Her mouth opened once and did not close cleanly. Her eyes filled, but the tears did not fall. They sat there, the way her tears always had, performing their own restraint. Layer 8. I stood up. I walked around the island. I kissed my mother on the top of her head, not the cheek, and I said, "The autopay is canceled. The will is your business. The house is your house. I will see you at Christmas if you decide to come, and I will not see you if you decide not to. Adrian, would you walk me out?" Adrian walked me out. We stood at my car in the driveway, under the maple, in the cold, late September air, and she said, "Greer, I am sorry. I should have called you 8 months ago. I should have called you 29 years ago." I said, "Yes, you should have." I said it without cruelty. I said it because it was true, and because I have spent a long time inside her family lying about what is true, and I am not going to lie back. I drove home. I want to tell you about the drive because the drive mattered. It is exactly 41 minutes from Belmont Road in Bettendorf to Brady Street in Davenport, and I made it that morning in 54. I drove the long way along River Drive, past the casino boat and the bend at LeClaire, and the place where my father used to park his Buick on Saturday mornings to watch the barges. And I cried, finally, for the first time in 2 months. I cried until I had to pull over in a small gravel turnout near the bridge at 14th, and I sat in the car with the engine off and the river in front of me, and I cried the way you cry when you have stopped renting an apartment you have lived in for 34 years. It was not a clean cry. It was a long, ugly, heaving cry, the kind that makes your face look swollen for the rest of the day, the kind that empties the chest. Marigold, in the passenger seat, climbed across the console and lay her old gray muzzle on my thigh, and she let me weep into her ear. I would not admit this out loud. I am admitting it here. I told my dog I was sorry. I do not know who I was apologizing to. The natural consequences cascaded over the next 6 weeks, and I want to tell you about them without pleasure, because pleasure was never the point. My mother, faced with a budget she had not actually managed in 14 years, called her financial advisor that afternoon, and he explained, gently, that the country club dues alone would need to come down. She called me twice. The first call was tears. The second call was practical questions. Neither call was an apology that I recognized. I do not require it. I do not require it because I have stopped requiring anything from her, which is a kind of peace I want every woman listening to me to have. Adrian, with her brother-in-law's family attorney, drafted a private agreement that splits the Belmont Road house equally between us in the event of our mother's death, regardless of the amended will, and brought it to Davenport over coffee one Saturday in early November, and slid it across to me without asking me to sign. I have not signed it yet. I may not. My mother sold the second car, the small gray sedan she had bought after my father died, and used mostly to drive herself to the salon in Bettendorf on Tuesdays. And she did not tell me. I heard about that from Adrian, too. The country club friends stopped including my mother at the Friday luncheon table. I did not hear about it from her. I heard about it from Patricia Whitlow's daughter, who used to babysit me. The selective reconciliation came slowly. My mother sent me one short text on the third Sunday after the cancellation, on a Sunday morning at 7:12, that said only, "I am sorry the way I said it landed." I did not respond. I do not know yet whether I will. The way I said it is not the part that requires an apology. The part that requires an apology is what was being said. She has not yet found the words for that part, and I am not going to write them for her. Adrian drove down one Sunday in November. We walked Marigold along the frozen path by the Mississippi River, the river half gray, half gold, the wind pushing the chill into our coats, and somewhere between River Drive and the bridge, she said, in a voice I have been waiting 41 years to hear, "Greer, you have always been the real one, too." I did not answer right away. I am taking that sentence in pieces, the way you take a meal you have been hungry for too long to swallow whole. The final act was a letter. I sat at my kitchen table on a Wednesday evening in November and wrote my mother one page by hand, in the controlled blue ink loops my father taught me. I did not list grievances. I wrote one line, the philosophical statement of this whole thing, and I want to say it to you now because I think a few of you need it tonight. Love that has to be paid for monthly is not love. It is rent. I am moving out. I mailed it. I did not wait for a response. I do not need one. The poetic coda lands on a Tuesday morning in December. My beagle Marigold is 11 and slow now, and we walk the river path slowly, with the air sharp, the river half frozen, and my mother's birthday cake plate finally washed and put away in the back of a low cabinet I do not open often. I am not happy yet. Happy is going to take a while. I am not paying for anything except my own life. I want to tell you about Christmas, because Christmas was the first test, and tests like that one tell you who you are now. My mother sent me a card in mid-December, a heavy ivory card with her monogram, the same monogrammed card she has used for 20 years. And inside, in her tight, pretty handwriting, she wrote, "Greer, the door is open if you would like to come for Christmas Eve. Adrian and the children will be here. I would like to see you. Mom." I read it standing at my mailbox on Brady Street with Marigold sitting at my feet, and I read it 3 times, and the woman I had been at 14 wanted to drive out to Bettendorf and put the camel sweater back on. The woman I am now did not. I wrote back on a smaller card. I wrote, "Mom, thank you for the invitation. I will not be coming this year. I will see you in the spring if you would like to come to Davenport. Greer." I mailed it. I went home. I made a small pot of beef stew, and I sat at the kitchen table and I ate it slowly, while Marigold dozed on the rug. There was no anger, and there was no triumph. There was just a Tuesday evening in December in a kitchen that belonged entirely to me. I want every woman who is listening to me right now to know what that kitchen sounds like. It sounds like a refrigerator humming, and a beagle breathing, and the small clink of a spoon against a bowl. It does not sound like a guidance counselor's voice across a kitchen door. The trust my father left me sat in the same account it had been sitting in for 32 years, and I did not touch it. I did not buy myself anything. I did not move out of the row house. I did not even take a vacation. I did one thing. I called Vera Linden's office that Friday and asked her if I could buy her lunch at the diner on Harrison Street. And we sat in my father's old booth in the back, and I asked her to tell me the things he had said about me at lunches over the years that I had never been told. And she told me, slowly, for 90 minutes, until our coffees were cold and the diner had emptied out. I will not repeat what she said here. Some things are not for the comments. I will tell you only that my father had loved me out loud, every Wednesday, for 19 years, in a booth in a diner in Davenport, Iowa, in front of a woman who has held the box for me for 6. My name is Greer Tatum. I am 38 years old. I am sitting at my own kitchen table in the row house on Brady Street in Davenport, Iowa, with Marigold's old gray muzzle resting on my left foot, and a letter from my father in a manila document on the table in front of me. And I am thinking about all of you who are listening to me right now, in your cars and your kitchens and your parking lots. If anything in this story landed for you tonight, would you do one last thing? Tell me in the comments what your version of the daybed in the sewing room was. Hit like if you have stopped paying rent in your own family. Subscribe, because there are women on this channel every week whose stories you are going to need. And share this with one woman in your life who is still earning her own room, because the room was never the prize. The woman doing the earning was. Good night. The porch light is on. The autopay is canceled. The mother is, finally, just my mother.